Okay, evening everybody. I saw all the talks that has been happening over the past 2 days, and I have no idea why they put me last because this is probably one of the most driest topic I can think of. Right? It's not so much from games development. I'm not touching game art. I'm not touching game design. I'm not even touching game technology. We are actually coming from the ecosystem, from a talent, and well, it is quite useful for you guys, hopefully. This one talks a little bit about the industry. It talks a little bit about pay scales. It talks about a little bit about salaries. It also hopefully can interest the companies which are here, the studios which are here as well. Yeah, so just to let you know, last year we actually introduced or we released a report called the Southeast Asia Game Development Industry Talent Economic Report. So what is talent economics? Talent economics is the basically the economics of what makes the talent, what kind of things can grow talent ecosystems in countries, right? Specifically for games development. So a little introduction. Alright, so yeah, hi. My name is Ike, that's IKE, one alphabet short of owning IKEA, unfortunately. I'm the head of school at the School of Computing at Asia Pacific University, so we run a game development program there. I'm also the chairman of the Kuala Lumpur chapter for ACM SIGGRAPH, and I'll go into a little bit about that later on as well. Okay, so why is talent so important? According to Talent Core, so Talent Core has this thing called the Talent Development Life Cycle. Sorry, I'm just walking about just to piss him off. He's like trying to follow me everywhere. Yeah? So Talent Core has this thing called the Talent Life Cycle. And the Talent Life Cycle is this. When there is insufficient talents, it leads to constrained growth. When there is constrained growth, it leads to fewer jobs. And when there are fewer jobs, it leads to talent leakages. And the cycle continues. When there's talent leakages, it leads to insufficient talents, right? And it's a self-perpetuating cycle. And this is very, very important. Because when the games development industry started in Malaysia those days, in the early 90s, we were talking about this problem, right? Because when we don't have enough talent pool, the companies won't come in. And when the companies don't come in, when the studios don't set up, and we don't have enough studios, that's where people would grow. You can't grow, we have 100 juniors, how are they going to go to a senior level or mid-level if there are not enough companies? So what happens? There are fewer jobs. And when there are fewer jobs, that's where we cross the causeway and go into the country that must not be named. Alright, we go into Singapore. Alright, we go into Singapore, and then when there are talent leakages, what happens? Insufficient talent. So this is what we call the brain drain. In our case, it's the talent is the technical drain. Alright? So this is something that we were addressing as well with this report. So what was this report? Basically, the objective is an in-depth analysis, right, of the economic and talent ecosystem in Southeast Asia, right? The Southeast Asian countries, I must say, would be Indonesia, Singapore, Vietnam, Cambodia, Malaysia, and Thailand. Yeah, we did include Myanmar into the picture and a few more other Southeast Asia. So these are the 6 Southeast Asian countries. And these are the 6 Southeast Asian countries which have a strong enough game presence. So there are 2 main objectives we did for this report. One is to find out the talent pay scale as well as the different variables. What is the thing that affects pay scales in Southeast Asia and specifically in Malaysia, right? I think it's the biggest question everyone is asking, right? If I join game development, boleh cari makan tak? Right? Can I find a job? And not only can I find a job, how much can I get paid? Okay? Hopefully it's not too depressing. Alright? The second is to provide insights on the supply and demand of the game development ecosystem. Of course, we also want to provide some study that we did to benchmark against other game development hubs. So this is the purpose and the objective of this study. And we looked at it, so I must share some methodology with you also for those who are students and students who are doing research methodology and students who are doing your FYP, pay attention. Alright? Basically, there are 5 steps. One of us, the survey broke into 2 parts. We did the survey with individuals, talents, game developers from the 6 countries. And we basically look at their age, we look at their gender, we look at their skill level, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years experience. We look at their working experience, we look at the area of expertise, whether it's game development, game tech, support, game design, so on and so forth. And of course, the most important, we look at the pay scale. How did that happen? Yeah, so we look at the talent demographics, all those factors. Then we look at the talent cost, right? How much how much do they earn, right? We look at the demands from a studio point of view. So not only did we research on the talents, we also did data gathering on the game studios. We went to the game studios and asked them, what's their next 5-year plan? What areas do they need to grow, right? What are the current requirements? What's the size of the business? We also look from the individual. We actually wanted to find out what makes them happy, what makes them unhappy. All right, so I shared this about, when was this, Abbas? 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago with all the industry people, so usually at the CEO level, but now I'm sharing at the talent level and the students level. So hopefully there's a takeaway for this. And then of course we analyzed, we synthesized the survey data. We did a benchmark comparison with 3 countries, right? First is Germany, the Hamburg game development scene. We of course also checked with Saudi Arabia, all right? Upcoming, because they pump a lot of money, like Chelsea. And we also checked with China, right? And of course then we provided some recommendations. So this is basically the entire methodology. So let's get into the crux of the matter. So these are some of the key findings. Number 1, 80% of the workforce in Southeast Asia comprises of the individuals between ages 25 to 34. So it's a relatively young workforce, right? Relatively young. Having said that, games development actually started in Southeast Asia in, I think, about 1996, 97, right? So, comparing the seniors are pretty old, like no hair one, okay? Alright. Second, females actually make up less than 20% of the workforce, which is lower than the 30% ratio worldwide. In the tech industry, specifically computer science, data science, software engineering, the women workforce makes about 26.7%. So actually games, right, is actually quite low. It's only 20% of the workforce. But to give a comparison, 40% of the gamers out there are females. Right? So I'm so glad we have initiatives like Women in Games, Wig Out, and everything to hopefully push out, and Women in STEM to push out this, because there is a disparity there. And it is a disparity that must be addressed. Third, this might be a bit shocking, okay? Game programmers earn the highest salary. It's not very shocking, it's true. Okay, game programmers earn the highest salaries, which is about 40% over game designers. Show of hands here. How many are game designers? Alright, yeah, so game technology is over 40% over game designers and only 18% over game artists. But this is Southeast Asia in general. We will deep dive into Malaysia later on. Males generally receive 16% higher compensation than women. Alright? And if I check with UK game studios, it's about 17%. If I check with the tech industry, it's usually at about 18%. So games, their ratio is acceptable, so to speak. Alright? 63% of game developers in Southeast Asia have undergraduate degrees, so there is a emphasis on formal education, right? This is in Southeast Asia. Yeah, so undergraduate in this manner is degree programs. Okay. Now here comes the thing. For entry-level salaries, that means fresh graduate, Indonesia ranks the lowest of the 6 countries. Singapore has the highest entry level, okay? And of course, Malaysia ranks 3rd. So it's Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, right? Of course, we have to take into consideration currency, right? Cost of living and other factors. But this is just to give you a general snapshot. Now, the research is there to give a general snapshot only, okay? However, when we go away from entry level and we go into the monthly average salary, the lowest is Indonesia, surprisingly followed by Malaysia. Okay? So Malaysia ranks lowest than the Philippines in general compensation, okay, for Southeast Asia. Of course, Singapore is the highest. Right? And last but not least, of course, higher education correlates with higher compensation. Now, in Malaysia, okay, so this is general Southeast Asia. In Malaysia, however, game artist earns an average of 1,200 USD, okay, which is just 3% lower than game programmers on average. On average. And this is not surprising. Some of you might go, where got such thing? I thought game programmers get paid higher. On average, because you have to understand, Malaysia, for the past 20, 30 years, has been a game art capital. Yeah, we've been focusing a lot on outsourcing. We have not, or very few companies went on to development. Only, I think, in the past 10 years, 5 years, that have studios that have started to produce their own content, their own IP, and therefore we have more game programmers coming into the picture. Okay? So game programmers earn the highest entry-level salary, right? But it's not that high. It's just 0.35% over game art. In general, there are exceptions to the case, right? Here's an interesting fact. Male talents earn an average of US 1,317 per month versus females. So there is a salary disparity. Yeah, okay, some of the females here, you look not very happy. Don't blame me, okay? This is just a report, I just need the findings, okay? But generally, there is a disparity. And the disparity is actually quite normalized in Southeast Asia. Alright? If I were to check on the tech sector, it's about 25%. Right? If I check on the banking and finance sector, it's about 20%. So it's about more or less the same. But we need to address that. Alright? This is something which I think gender inequality is something that we need to address. Okay? Here's an interesting thing. Satisfaction with salary and benefits represents a major challenge for the game developer. So there is less than 50%. So less than 50% of the game developers are satisfied with what they're getting. Right? Across 9 years. Right? Game artists are generally the most unhappy. Game artists are usually the most emotional, right? Followed by game programmers. Right? And they are most unhappy with their salary, their work culture, their projects, their growth. Yeah? And these are some of the most important aspects. Amongst the issues for retention are shortage of senior talents in local studios and limited growth opportunities. Right? So in general. So I just wanted to share a little bit about this data here. Malaysia is home to approximately 10 international studios. Right? We have, the last count from IGDA Malaysia, we have about 85 local studios. Okay? 85 local studios. 30 more since 2012. 2014, we did a survey. We only had 54 studios. We have increased tremendously over the last 10 years, right? Over the last 11 years. But if you look at the breakup as well, major studios, international studios, major studios above 100 staff is only about 10. Alright? This data is about 3 years old. Okay? And I wanted to share a little bit of the history as well. Remember that's what I was saying about Malaysia, right? So a lot of people don't know that Malaysia started doing games in the mid-90s, right? The entire Malaysian ecosystem for games started in the 90s. The first studio that started was Motion Pixel. Thank you, Buzz, for pointing that out. Last time I actually said it was Game Brains. For the past 10 years, I thought it was Game Brains, okay? But it's actually Motion Pixel. The first outsourcing studio. The first international studio was Codemasters Malaysia. Alright? They came in 2006. Technically, we should have been earlier with Ubisoft, but Ubisoft didn't come to Malaysia. They went to Singapore. Sorry, question. Anyone here are Singaporeans? Singaporean, really? Really? Passport they take out. Singaporean. Okay, I'm so sorry I'm going to say this again, but yeah, because Singapore went bluff them, they said they got the talent pool, so on and so forth. But you know that close to 80% of the people in Ubisoft are actually from overseas, right? So they actually bring in a lot of Malaysians, they bring in a lot of Indonesians, they bring in a lot of other aspects. And by the way, we own nasi lemak. Just joking. You're really Singaporean. Okay, well done. Brother from a different mother. Okay. The first university to include game design was in 1999. Okay. Just to give you a little bit of context. Okay. Globally, the first institution officially to start to offer a diploma program was what again? DigiPen. Okay, DigiPen US. Alright. DigiPen was a studio first. They started in the early 90s, and then they went into training. But officially, DigiPen offered programs in 1998. So Malaysia is not too far off. 1 year later, MMU started to offer game design in their computer science programs. We have grown since then, right? We have about 24 learning institutions, 4 academies, vocational, alright? We have 3 polytechnics, 4 polytechnics and 1 community college. We have 4 vocational academies, so people like Classroom, Undo, Exola, right? We have 15 universities, and we have 1 college that offer games. I managed to do this last night to add it in as well. This gives a little So the first studio in Malaysia was Motion Pixel. Okay, they established in 1983, but they did their first outsourcing game project in 1994. Okay. The first PC game in Malaysia, Vanguard Ace, was developed in 1997 by this company called Imaginative Solutions in Berhad. The first major outsourcing studio, that means handle close to 15 or a dozen or more games, was Game Brains. Okay? And they started in 1998. The first MMO, the first university that offered game design, Multimedia University, 1999. Alright. The first MMORPG in Malaysia. Okay. Can anybody except Basil? By the way, that's Basil. He is the 4th IGDA chapter coordinator, 3rd IGDA chapter Malaysia chapter coordinator. IGDA started in 2002, right? 2001. Okay. So first with Brad, followed by Terence. No, he'll me, and then followed by you. Okay. So he can't answer, he knows everything. Right? First MMORPG in 2005. Can anybody guess the name? Sorry? There was this, so you can just check it out. It's called Feng Wan Online. Feng Wan, Storm Riders Online. Okay, it was a China IP, and this was started by Phoenix Game Studios. Phoenix Game Studios started in 2002. Right, they released They released the beta in 2004. The full game release was 2005. Okay. Another outsourcing studio, not first anymore, another major outsourcing studio was Sherman 3D in 2003. Okay. The first dedicated game diploma came out in 2005. That was Lim Kok Weng, the university that must not be named. Lim Kok Weng University, right? The first international studio, and this actually kickstarted the whole thing. Codemasters officially came down in 2006, right? Followed by Polyassets, Polyassets in 2009, followed by Streamline Studios in 2010, followed by Bandai Namco in 2016, followed then by the three major studios. W11 2018 officially registered. Operation started in 2021. PlayStation Studios officially registered in 2019. Official operation started in 2020. Right? Electronic Arts. Electronic Arts is a bit special. They acquired Codemasters, right? And they moved into TRX, so they officially came in 2021 as well. Larian Studios 2019, Virtuos 2021, and Limheim Studios 2022. And there are few more studios, and this is a live thing which we're going to add to it. The green color ones is in 2006, Igloo Digital Arts started, okay, and they morphed eventually into Lemon Sky. So Lemon Sky, I think it's quite possibly the oldest fully Malaysian outsourcing studio. Can I say that? The largest outsourcing studio, right? Fashion Republic started in 2008. So this is just a general history. So Malaysia has been actually doing games for a long time, right? Southeast Asia as well. So Malaysia has a head start over most, if not all, our Southeast Asian counterparts. Okay? Arguably, we started before Singapore. Brother. Alright? In Malaysia, observations, male earns a significant higher salary than females. Yeah? Which is still below the 20% mark, which is very, very interesting to note this, right? In Malaysia, for every 103 males, there are 100 females. Alright, so it's a 49.9%. So please don't tell me you cannot find girlfriend. But our talent ecosystem doesn't reflect that disparity. Okay, so one of the findings we found later on is we need to significantly increase the female population in game development to address the talent limitation we have. Malaysia ranks third for entry-level salary and second lowest for overall salary, which is a shame because we started games first. We have the most studios in Southeast Asia, arguably. We have the most international studios. Yeah. No other, I think Singapore has four. Bandai Namco. Singapore has Bandai, Koei Temco, Konami, and you can argue Lightspeed Studios, right? You have EA also, but EA is a marketing, right? Marketing. You have Riot, but also Riot is also marketing, not development yet. So yeah. Alright. So yeah, Malaysia is known for its art-centric studios. Our focus is on outsourcing and smaller content. Generally, younger developers are unhappy with salary. Okay? I'll skip this and I'll go to this. So we did a study, a benchmarking study with three major hubs. Now, of course, if you're talking about the actual big hubs, it will be the Canadian hub, right? The Montreal Game and Development Hub. Those are huge, right? The Netherlands hub is also huge. But we wanted to check with hubs that have only been around for the past 15 years or less. So we checked with Germany. And Germany is so successful because if you look at it, Germany has 11 Games Industry Association. 11 Game Industry Association. To date, Malaysia has 0 official associations. We have a very strong presence in IGDA Malaysia, but IGDA Malaysia is not an association. When you're not an association, you cannot lobby for certain things. You cannot represent the industry for certain things. So this becomes a concern. And this is something I want to address to everybody here. By the way, Malaysia is going to start a community association soon. Okay? If you have time, and when the word comes out, join up and be active. Because there needs to be a voice of Malaysian game developers in Malaysia. They do have regional networks funded. Okay? Good news, Malaysia also has very strong funding thanks to MDEC. Okay? And investment in talent development and education. We also have that. Okay? The only thing lacking is we don't have a strong push at the association level. Saudi Arabia, anyone from Saudi Arabia before I say the wrong thing as well? Saudi Arabia basically is throwing a lot of money to kickstart the games industry. They are throwing a lot of money, they're bringing a lot of big studios. They're pushing a lot of money into education as well. If you look at all these three, they realize one of the most important things. Remember what I said earlier on? To grow the ecosystem, you need talents. Without talents, foreign direct investors won't come. Okay? We had discussions with a lot of foreign direct investors. Yeah? People like Sony PlayStation Studios, Double 11, Bandai Namco. One of the first questions they ask is not how's the infrastructure in Malaysia, not what is the cost of living, is what is the access to talent pool. How many talents you have that allows me to grow or expand rapidly in the next 5 to 10 years, right? So this is something very important. So all three game hubs actually focuses on talent. If you look at Saudi Arabia, it's funds. They want to bring in studios in order to do knowledge exchange, investment, and also scholarships. If you look at China 5 years ago was specifically and predominantly focused on mobile games. They didn't have to do anything else because their population is so huge, right? The mobile game was enough to grow the entire population. But now they have a focus on their own internal IP, thanks to Black Myth. They have figured the formula, and when they figure out more of what to do, they are going to literally dominate the Asia Pacific region. Okay? But you can see they also offer subsidies and incentives to promote development and to bring their IP worldwide. And last but not least, they actually is a government, is a regulatory body and push to grow the ecosystem. And we in the study also actually showed this, right? What must we do? What should studios do? So I'm not sure how many studios are here, but yeah, these are some of the things that studios must do. Invest in technical skill development in order to grow the ecosystem. Universities cannot develop. There must be at the studio level, right? Number 2, diversify role specializations. Okay. Number 3, start looking at IP. Easier said than done. We have been, I think Malaysia has been asking that, has been pushing that for a very long time. One of the, you all heard of Angry Birds, right? Angry Birds is by which studio? Anyone knows? Rovio, correct. Angry Birds actually kickstarted the entire Finnish game development ecosystem through that one game, through that one IP. We have been saying it for the longest time that Malaysia needs to kickstart our one IP that takes the world by storm. So all those who are doing game development, we are looking to you. Okay, make the next burung marah. Okay. And of course, to foster an inclusive work environment. Policymakers, people like MDEC, which are not here, ex-MDEC, a lot of people, okay, support specialized training and upskilling programs, incentivize IP development, establish a national game investment fund, which they have, develop a strategic roadmap, okay, for the game industry, which we have, Okay? Encourage international collaboration, which we have. And last but not least, support women-centric programs, which we have not. This is something that we need to grow because there is an untapped talent pool for women. Right? So this is a summary of the entire report. Again, it's a bit dry. So if you want to actually see the entire report in its entirety, scan here, and I hope I don't give you a virus. I don't know. Does it turn out? It's not some anti-website, right? I tend to get the URLs wrong sometimes. Got no. Okay. The last time I put the QR code, it gave us something else. Okay, so I have to do disclaimer now. Alright, so do take some time to read it. All the stats are inside there as well. Thank you so much. Question and answer. This is my Instagram. Please follow it. I'm trying to be a part-time influencer, not influencer. Alright, you can find me on LinkedIn, or if you need to email me, please do. Okay, I'm going to open it to any question and answer. If I don't know the answer, I'm just going to walk off. No, just okay. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Tan. A lot of fun. I'm right here in this event. Anyway, I got a game project I've been working for quite some time, and now since last year, in fact, and I think it would be a very good IP for Malaysia as a whole. But the plan is just paper only at the moment. Just this afternoon, I secured one illustrator, and but that's all I have. So basically, I need funding and stuff to get this idea going. This IP going. Hopefully, it will be a very flourishing, prospering one, like become the next Black ME.
So, is there a question? What was the question? Are you looking for money? I don't have money.
I'm looking for investment.
Investment. Okay, so my advice is, if you have an idea first, right? My advice is, have you entered any game jams? One of the ways you can develop it further is enter a game jam, get a group of people to work with you, get out the idea, see if the prototype works, test it. If enough people are saying that, hey, this is good enough, then you move to the next level. Because ideas, a lot of people have ideas, but whether or not the ideas work or not is a different thing altogether. Yeah, so do enter game jams. Game jams is a very good place for you to network with programmers and network with artists, so that you can get artists and programmers to collaborate together on this project. Alright? Does it make sense? Then you move on to the next step. Okay, Sharp. Dr. Sharp, sorry.
Dr. Sharp of AI, right? So you know me as Sharp, of course. Okay, if I may say something about what I think we both went through, right? I mean, during the early days of multimedia, surely me was a 3D. Asking for grants is a bit of, at our time, is a bit of a macam jauh sangat. And most of the time, we were not professional enough, or we don't know how to put a proposal together to get it. And most of the funding is just slipped through our hands. So that's why I remember. And then, short of having a super rich uncle, I think it's the same question as what he was asking. That seeing all the reports from everywhere, what is your best opinion on? Not just not everybody is savvy enough to, like what you said just now, go to game jams and all. Maybe I'm a kampung boy who is from a faraway place in the village, but have an aspiration, to become a game creator or something. For sure, the money I'm not able to source. The links I'm not able to source again. The context I'm not able to source. So to normalize, game in for every type of status of community what is your best advice? Make it normalized. When I was doing 3D, I think I was the only guy who was doing 3D aside from the 2 or 3 big companies. I was the only one who was doing, that was 1983, 3D animator freelance, right? So people ask me, what you do in KL? Sham, what you do in KL? I said, I'm a 3D animator. And they say, you work in the zoo? Right? I said, why zoo? The animal, they say, no, 3D animator. So it was very hard, for me to break through. So with all the data that you have, for the past 10 years, what do you suggest best?
So no one is saying that you need a lot of grants. You need a lot of grants to do a main project. Vanguard Ace, right? The first PC game to come out in Malaysia. Vanguard Ace didn't have grants. Vanguard Ace was 2 or 3 of them, I think 2 of them, coming together and working on the game. And if you look back in history, all the early game developers was either 1 person or 2 person. Nothing is stopping them. Grants is there if you want to move or you want to move up the value chain. But you cannot go to grants with a concept itself. There must be something where, because the grant is not just to push in for you to develop. What is the commercial value? What is the monetization value? It cannot be a game that I want to play. It has to be the game that other people will pay money to play. Because if Malaysia gives grants, there are other people here, so I'm looking at them. The whole purpose is not to just give the money and let you do something. It's to build the visibility. If I give you the money, there must be something visible for you to actually bring up the name and the GDP of Malaysia. Betul tak? Right? So we look at that perspective. If you come in with just a game idea without any of the monetization idea, without any of the growth idea, won't get the grant. Right? So I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Yes. Oh, wait.
Yes. Hello. I want to ask you about the. Yeah. Sorry. Okay, I will ask you a question about for which and from your data, what is like the most proficient or like salaries that highest in the game community?
The highest salary.
And
Hypothetically, if I were to answer that, it should be game programmers. It should be either game programmers or game engineers. So if not necessary, you have to be a game programmer itself to work in the games industry. You can be studying software engineering. For example, Electronic Arts are looking for software engineers. They're looking for software engineers to do their software testing. Right? So from a tech perspective, that is actually the highest salary. Having said that, I don't know whether I want to say something wrong here, but I'm going to say it anyway. In comparison of the tech industries, the highest salary is actually data science. Data science, we talk about 4,000 to 4,005 fresh graduate salary, which is very high, right? But that is entry level. When we talk about games programming, usually game programmers earn anywhere from 3 to 8 to about 3-4, depending on the company, depending on the skill set. That is entry level. But the scalability changes. So we do have students which started off at entry level at 3.2, but 2 years later, they moved up and they got 6.5 for 2 years. We do have other students which went into blockchain, for example. It's a 5-figure after about 8 years. So it's all about the scalability, but it's all about what value you can bring. But entry level, data science is first, followed by cybersecurity, followed by AI. That's the reality. So I would be lying if I told you game programming, you buy, get back Mercedes, no problem. Right? So that's the reality. Sorry.
I have one more. So how important is portfolio versus like academic background?
Good question. The reality is this: if you're game art, right, the only thing companies care about is your portfolio. They don't really care where you graduated from. Okay. So a lot of people say, okay, then I don't need to study, I just do my portfolio. But the reality is, there is only 1% of people out there who don't go through formal education and their portfolio is really good. You need to go through the formal education in order for you to pick up the necessary skill sets. Unless you are so hardworking, so self-driven, and nothing is wrong with that. There have been instances where some of the pioneers in the game development space in Malaysia actually don't have formal education. Right? I don't know whether I should say this. There is a New Zealand guy who was a technical art trainer for Codemaster Studios. Right? Technical art trainer for Codemaster Studios. He doesn't even have a degree. He doesn't even have a diploma. Right? One of the technical artists in Game Brains, very famous. I'm not naming any names, but really experienced one. Only has the foundation, A levels. There is another guy, very experienced game designer involved in Feng Wan Online, only has an NCC diploma. Right? So actually, qualifications is not as important as portfolio for game art. For game programming, however, well, you can argue that you can self-teach yourself programming, but the reality is the fundamental knowledge is very important. If you can pick it up, by all means. Now the problem happens when you want to go overseas. Because when you want to go overseas, some countries require minimum level, which is a degree, in order to get a work permit. So there have been instances where in Malaysia, we have very high-end, very qualified people, but couldn't go to specific countries because of their work visa. Sometimes it's relaxed, sometimes it's not. It all depends. Yeah, it all depends on Donald Trump. Okay, no. Yes.
Well, thank you, Kaptan, for sharing your research. It's very enlightening. So the question I have is related to the upcoming community association that you mentioned, right? So I was just wondering, where could we follow for more information on when this association is, set up and such?
Very good question. So, here's the thing. Go on Facebook. I don't know whether you guys still use Facebook. If you guys don't use Facebook, for this case, download Facebook. Join IGDA Malaysia. Right? IGDA Malaysia has game hangouts and you meet very often. By the way, the gentleman standing there is a community leader for Game HQ Malaysia. Okay, Game HQ Malaysia is another community portal where it talks about events and activities. Either IGDA Malaysia or Game HQ Malaysia. Alright, can you find it? If cannot find for Ivan, okay, follow them. I am sure when the news comes out, and it will come up pretty soon, I hope, for the association to start, that's where you will join. They have, I think the last IGDA, they announced something already. Right? They announced the news that they are starting an association. But there are still some hiccups they need to go through with the registrar of societies. Once that happens, no, not an issue anymore. Okay?
Thank you.
So far I've got 4 guys. The ratio between girl and guy questions are a bit lower. But no choice. You can ask. What's your favorite?
Hello.
Yes.
Hi, thank you. This question is probably just a follow-up from the gentleman there, because about the gaming association, we've seen that you've pointed out the disparity that Malaysia that says 0, and what was that, Germany? But how about the comparison between the other Southeast Asian countries?
I think most Southeast Singapore has a Singapore Game Association. Philippines have the GDAP, the Game Development Association of Philippines. Vietnam has a VGA, Vietnam Video Games Alliance or Association. Thailand also has an association. Indonesia has AGI, Asosiasi Game. So Indonesia, yes. Malaysia is the only one that doesn't have a formal association. We have had guilds. We had CCIG, the create, I can't remember what CCIG is. CCIG was not a formalized association. We had POSTAM, right? Post Production Association of Malaysia, which has a games element inside, but that is also non-active. We used to run this thing called My Game Dev. My Game Dev was under was a national key economic area for education under the Ministry of Higher Education, right? But it's not association. Okay, I started the Game Development Council of Malaysia under the Ministry of Higher Education, but it's not an association. And we cannot start something under the ministry because if you're under a ministry, we cannot lobby the government. We cannot go, hey, we need a minimum wage for game developers. We can't do that. Right? So that's why association is important. And we don't have at the moment. But good news is this year is a very good year because there's been a talk for a community association and a talk for a trade association. So hopefully it comes to pass. Any other questions? Yes, gentlemen.
Okay. Is it working?
No, it's not.
Oh. Hello. Okay. So this is regarding that. Earlier you said that women in the gaming industry is less, right? And their pay is less. So it got me thinking, maybe because the pay is less, that's why women aim less for the game development industry because they know they're not going to get paid equally, right? So moving on, is there, you know how other industries have like a diversity quota, right? That, okay, some percentage they will hire women. Obviously, I'm not saying they're going to hire any woman. It has to be like qualified. So do you think the game industry does have a quota like this?
Very good question. Okay, to answer your first question, do you know that the salary disparity is not only in games and tech, but it appears everywhere in all sectors? No. Yes, right? Right? Unfortunately, right? Unfortunately. This is something we have to address moving forward. That's number one. Number two, what's the question number two?
So because this is a problem everywhere, there's a quota, right? To encourage women to apply to industries so that, they are hired, right? So doesn't the industry have
So our Malaysian government also has a quota as well, 30% in this, the government. And certain industries also have that. Malaysia, for games development, don't have that because we don't have an association to push for it. We don't have a trade association to come forward and say, look, if you want to be part of the association, we need to do this, so and so and forth. Right? And most importantly, at the end of the day, let's be realistic. When you go and ask during education fair, you don't ask as a female how much would I earn as opposed to this person. Because it varies from company to company. Yeah? Unfortunately, that's the case. So we need to actually build up more awareness. Women in Games Malaysia started. Are you a member?
No, I'm not Malaysian.
Okay, let me rephrase that. Women in Games Malaysia or women in games, they don't look specifically at your nationality as long as you're a game developer in Malaysia, right? As a student or working in Malaysia. So do reach out. I can tell you later about who to reach out to. They are quite a strong community and hopefully they will be strong enough to push for changes in that. Alright? Do I have time for one last question? Two last questions? Why is no one asking me what comb I use or what shampoo I use? Soap. Chinese, I save money.
So my question is kind of like a shower thought kind of question. I don't think it's that important, but do you think that Malaysia became one of the first few countries to be like game developing due to the fact that we are one of the country's largest electronics manufacturers?
No. We came into games specifically because we had a very vibrant post-production industry. Malaysia has used to do a lot of TV commercials. We go into animation as well, right? And we were actually growing really fast until I think in the 1996 where Thailand took over us, right? And those days we used to have this policy. Farida, let me know whether I'm correct or not. We used to have this policy called MIM, made in Malaysia. So any TV commercials that came out in Malaysia needs to be produced in Malaysia. So that actually meant that a lot of our local talents actually got hands-on doing 3D assets, 3D animation. When that rule was relaxed, we lost out. So when we lost out, all those people decided where else to go. Then they look for other avenues, and that's where the games industry outsourcing started. It's because we have a very strong art background and art fundamental. Before we went into games, actually the studios that was big was animation. Right? Animation was the one that actually made a lot of money first before games. Now games have overtaken lah. Okay. By the way, how many of you have watched Life of Pi? Life of Pi, right? How many of you watched Hunger Games? Alright. How many of you watched Percy Jackson and Sea of Monsters? Alright. How many of you watched Alvin and Chipmunks? Did you know that portions of all those was done in Malaysia? Right. It was by this company called Rhythm and Hues. Rhythm and Hues is a Los Angeles-based studio that had a studio in Mumbai, studio in Los Angeles, and they had a studio in Malaysia. So Malaysians in Malaysia was responsible for Life of Pi. And you can see from there the ecosystem and the evolution of how we have reached where we have reached today. It has nothing got to do with electronics. Okay? Yeah. I hope I answered that question. Yes.
Okay. Hi, thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, just now you mentioned that Malaysia and basically any other fledgling industry needs an original IP, a blockbuster, in order to kickstart the wave, right? For example, you gave examples like Myth the Call and Angry Birds. And as I noticed, Malaysia has a pretty strong outsourced games development talent pool. In fact, I think that a lot of it has been built from the outsourcing, probably because of our labor advantage, our labor cost advantage as well. So what do you think are the key bottlenecks keeping Malaysia from leveraging on the existing talent, moving it into building a homegrown blockbuster IP as you suggested?
So basically, the outsourcing industry actually has helped Malaysia a lot because it's through outsourcing where we got the knowledge transfer. Actually, without the outsourcing, I think we wouldn't have the vibrant ecosystem that we have. But you're right. In order to move up the value chain, we need IP. So what's stopping us? I think the biggest thing a lot of Malaysians have is, I want to create a game for Malaysia or for Southeast Asia. You can't, because the population is not enough to sustain you long term. We have to create a game, an IP that goes internationally or globally. Now there are exceptions to this, right? If you look at it from an animation standpoint, Upin Ipin, right? That's different. Upin Ipin, I think their main growth was actually Indonesia. Indonesia has how many? I think more than 5 times the Malaysian population, and then they could export it out, right? Games is a bit more different because animation consumer content is less than games. Games is producing so many. There's so many games out there, right? I unfortunately I don't have the exact answer to that, because if I did have the answer to that, I would be doing my own game and driving a big car. So I'll come back to you one day, okay? Last question. Okay, last question.
So basically, I was thinking about, like, you know how Malaysia, we have a lot of like mythological tales and stuff like that, and like especially when we think of some of the games, European-based games, they focus a lot on mythology, like the whole God of War series. Do you think Malaysia can put something forward like that on a global scale, or do you think it would only have appeal over here?
Why not? China's Black Myth Wukong is based on Wukong, the monkey god. But if you look at the global consumption of it, it's super high. Mobile Legends, Mobile Legends. But Mobile Legends also has a wide consumer as well for Southeast Asia. Nothing stopping us from creating content which are, and I think Malaysia has a lot of rich content. But it doesn't mean you take Malaysian rich content and culture and package it only for Malaysia. No, you take the rich content and culture, you package it and you sell it to the world. You sell it to the ones who are giving us tariffs. Okay, sorry, subtle thing there. Yeah, so I think it's a good recipe. We should do that. We should leverage on that. We have something that people don't really have. Right? We have a rich culture. I think Southeast Asia has an amazing rich culture. Why don't package it and sell it to the world? Maybe I can meet you separately. Right? Yeah. I think we have a next event here. Alright, so if that's all, thank you so much for your kind attention.
All right, thank you very much. Professor Dr. Tan Chin Ai.